In this tutorial video, we're going to discuss the importance of commenting your spells. Now, why is this so important? Now, when you have a relatively straightforward and simple spell like this, it may not necessarily really be necessary or even relevant to include comments to the spell, because once you have a basic understanding of Alexia BASIC terminology, it's fairly self-evident what this does. For example, it begins by clearing the emulated computer screen window, which of course is over here. Then we have the input box into command, which asks, what is your name? We place whatever value is provided by the user into user input variable word box 1. We then print hello, and then of course whatever the contents of word box 1 happens to be. Then we print goodbye, and then we print this demonstration is now over. And this is what it looks like once we cast this spell. Now, for the purpose of this demonstration, let's just assume that we nevertheless want to add some comments to this code just so that we remember what it's doing and why it's doing it. So there are two ways to add comments to Alexia BASIC spells. The first way is through the rem command, which is really just short for remark. So we can certainly add a remark as follows. Now you'll notice that in lieu of actually creating a break in this line, we're going to just use another rem command to continue the thought. Okay, so what we have here, and please do pardon any typos or spelling errors, but here what we essentially have is a situation where we've used rem, which of course is short for remark, to create some comments or some remarks that can perhaps be of some help if we were to look at this code again in the future and not really be sure what's going on. Now, needless to perhaps say, one could also add some of these remarks right within the code itself. So for example, if we wanted to just add a remark in the middle here, the next line prints hello, and the value, or rather contents one could say, of user input variable, that's what UIV stands for, user input variable word box 1. That could be one example of how to use a remark or comment. Now, typing in rem and encasing whatever remarks or comments we'd like to add to the spell within the brackets, as you see here, can sometimes be a little bit cumbersome and may not necessarily be the type of approach you'd like to take. So an alternative that exists is the following. Let's just go ahead and remove the remarks that we have on the screen right now. If you have a single quotation mark, and then after that single quotation mark you type something to the effect of, for example, this is a simple spell, and we're just going to relegate our comment to that just to make this a little bit faster. As you can see, this is something that describes what's going on, although of course not in great detail. But the important thing to pay attention to is that a single quotation mark will tell Alexia BASIC that this particular line is essentially a comment or a remark and should not be processed as being part of the spell. Where can using a single quotation mark like this be especially useful or relevant? Well, for example, if you wanted this particular spell to take place without perhaps 2 lines of code being executed, you can precede the spell coding with a single quotation mark, as you see here. That tells Alexia BASIC not to process these 2 lines of code, but instead to process this one, which of course says CLS, which is the clear screen command, to then process print goodbye, and to then print this demonstration is now over. So let's go ahead and cast this spell. and we will see what happens. So we're going to go ahead and cast the spell. We should see the emulated computer screen window be cleared, and then we should just see, and there it is, goodbye, this demonstration is now over. A couple things to keep in mind as it relates to using the single quotation mark. You don't want to use the single quotation mark after a particular command. So here we have CLS. You don't then want to add a single quotation mark and then wording such as "this clears the screen." At the present time, this will not be properly understood by Alexia BASIC. Instead, what you want to do is take this particular comment, not have it be either before or after the actual command, but have it instead be on a line above the command, or perhaps on a line below the command itself, as you see there. So that's something to keep in mind. Something else you'll want to also keep in mind is that when you utilize this type of commenting system within your spell, you're not going to necessarily want to embed a comment in the middle of the command itself. So for example, if we wanted to somehow try to sneak a command in here, saying something to the effect of "this will print goodbye," this would not be an optimal location to include that comment, because it's coming right after we've called the print command, and it's occurring right before we specify what is to be printed. So just to be absolutely clear, the optimal location for a comment is either on top or before a particular command is called, or immediately after, not next to it here on the side or before it or in the middle of it. So hopefully this begins to give you a better understanding of how you can comment your code with phraseology that helps you better understand what's happening, and also utilize the single quotation mark as we described in the short video to perhaps have portions of code not execute, so that you can better test your spell and figure out if it's working the way you want it to work. Thanks for watching. Now please subscribe to our channel.